Hello guys, welcome back to Tic Tac Toe. So today we are going to talk about the Pixel 5 and what direction or the route Google has chosen to go with this year. Now, this year Google has chosen to make their flagship Pixel devices as premium mid-range device, and that is because they have faced some pretty major issues over the last couple of years regarding their hardware and their prices. So to know better, we have to look all the way from the beginning of the Pixels, which is from 2016. So when Google released their 2016 lineup of phones after they have cancelled the Nexus lineup, it was the Pixel 1, and they showed the world what potential and capabilities a mobile photography could have, because they really nailed the camera and it was the best in the market and is still the best in the market for still photographies. Also, Google has showed us that how greatly and vastly a user experience can be improved just by an optimized user operating system, because Google's Android operating system is best when Google themselves implies it on their devices. Now, Google had faced some pretty major issues over the past couple of years, and especially or precisely after the release of the Pixel 2. So, after the release of the Pixel 2, people really hoped that Google would improve more on the camera front and the softwares and give the users a much more and much better user experience. But the thing was that the camera was still great, the software was as good as it was, but then they faced some pretty major display quality issues. At first, the pixels shipped with dead pixels, or some pixel owners complained that they had a greenish or a yellowish tint on their devices, and it really hurt the user experience. On the next iteration, or the Pixel 3 and the 3XL, the software was less optimized and buggy, and many apps used to be closed in the background just because of the lack of system memory or RAM. And also, another criticism that Google received last year before the Pixel 4 was the monstrous notch on the Pixel 3 XL. It was gigantic, had no symmetry, and looked really weird on the display, and it really intruded into the viewing experience. Now, people really thought that Google would learn from their mistakes from the past and improve vastly on the Pixel 4, and many had huge expectations from them. But the thing was that the Pixel 4 was a disaster itself. At first, many units were not sold, and as much it wasn't as popular as the Pixel 3 or 2 or even the 1, and they implied the project solely on their device, which was, to be said, a gimmick and totally useless because it was unreliable and it was unavailable in certain countries. Also, the battery life was really bad and disappointing. At that time, people were or companies were implementing about 5000, 4000 to 5000 mAh or milliamp hours of battery life, and smartphones were getting much better battery life than before, whereas the Pixel 4 implied a really small battery, about 2800 milliamp hours on the regular model, and on the XL model 3800. Now, although this could have been fixed on a developer patch, and Google has tried to improve the battery life by software updates and optimizations, the capacity was way too small and the components inside were very power hungry. For example, the Project Soli itself. Project Soli, if disabled, improved vastly on the battery life by giving at least an hour more. But what is the use of a feature that if you have to disable it just to get the basics and the essentials correct, right? So now this year, Pixel is being released as a mid-range device, and Google is going through this route just because of the A series of lineup. When they released the Pixel 3a, people really got amazed on what Google did, because they provided a really good camera, great software experience just for 399 and 499 accordingly for the X and XL models. Now that was really famous and many people bought them because it was a flagship level budget device from a renowned company, and Google really knows how to optimize their software for lower budget devices. So it gave users a very reliable user experience and a great camera, which was even comparable to $1,000 flagship, which was the iPhone XS at that time. Now they also have released the Pixel 4a a couple of months ago, and it also has great camera, great pricing, and a very reliable user experience. And many 3a owners are upgrading to that now. But the thing is that Pixel owners were disappointed by the build quality and also the pricing of that Pixel 4. Not to say the build quality was bad, but it was quite simple, and an inclusion of telephoto camera instead of a wide angle lens really pissed some of the users and owners. So now Pixel is thinking about listening to the feedback of the consumers, and they are making the Pixel 5 with the ultra wide camera. And we all know that when Google does camera, they do the best in the photography. So we all know that that ultra wide would be really good, just like the ones on Apple. And this year, although they are using a mid range silicon or SoC or chipsets, as some of you might know, the 765G, it is a really good performer, but not as fast as the flagship 865 produced by Qualcomm. Now the only problem is that although this Pixel 5 has great build quality, great user experience, a great camera, the problem is the competition itself. Now there, in this price about 699, there is the Apple iPhone 11 itself, which is just the flagship that Apple sells for about 1,000 plus dollars, but with just one lens which is been uh, removed from the iPhone 11 from then the iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max. Now for that reason many people are buying the iPhone 11 instead of these mid-range devices. And also Samsung has recently released the S20 Fan Edition, or the FE, which basically has better specs on paper than the Pixel 5, but bad build quality to be said. They're using plastic in 2020, whereas the Pixel 5 is using aluminium and glass. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to personal preference, which one you would choose. And I think Google is going to the right direction, because in the past, by the Nexus devices, Google has really nailed the mid-range user experience, and I think they are going to do it again. So that's been it today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please leave a like down below, and really do subscribe. A subscribe would be hugely appreciated. Till then, stay tuned and take care. Peace.